gap, bridging the gap between knowing and living. Now, you see in this picture a child using a mobile device to access what people will refer to as ChatGPT, but in general it is AI, okay? And the idea I wanted to print in this picture is a teacher asking a question, or a teacher teaching in class asks a question, and the child uses his mobile device to access the ChatGPT to answer the question that the teacher is asking. Now, each and every single one of us have done this before, right? And it is something people commonly refer to as cognitive offloading. Now, you see in this picture, the brain has just lifted a weight and it is very happy. I mean, initially, if you are lifting weight, you are supposed to be, you are supposed to have some facial expressions that depict how strong the weight or how heavy the weights are. But instead, the brain is smiling. That should tell you something about cognitive offloading. Now, cognitive offloading is defined as the process of reducing mental effort by reducing external tools or actions to manage information and tasks, rather than by solely on internal memory and cognitive processes. Now, this definition tells you one thing. It tells you that instead of using your brain for its normal function or its natural purpose, what you do instead is you extend it to other tools like your mobile device, your laptop, your computers, etc., etc., and possibly AI. We are scientists, and we know that anytime you don't use a muscle, what is the result? Atrophy. Right? No usage of muscle equals atrophy. And that is how your brain is like. If you don't use your brain, what happens to it? It dies. It undergoes the process scientists refer to as atrophy. You understand? Kindly continue. Now, this wasn't always the case. Right? This wasn't always the case. And that is why I want to take you through a timeline. What education meant in the past, what it means currently, and what it's going to mean in the future. What did it mean to be educated in the past? Education then was simpler, more focused and character driven, and more practical for life, but limited in access. I'm going to break each and every part down. Education then was simpler. When we say education then was simpler, picture yourself, a Ghanaian household. Somebody is growing up and he wants to become a seamstress. Right from there, we take the person to the tailor. We don't have to bother about taking the person through any vocabs, any literacy, numeracy, etc., etc. Right from there, we take the child to the seamstress so that that person starts to learn. And that is what I meant by simpler. Education was more focused in the sense that if you are going to become a seamstress, there was no other thing going to be attached. You become a seamstress for life, and that does it. Education was character driven, and that is why I have the picture of Plato teaching people. Back in the days, one of the things that were prioritized during education was character, morals. Philosophy was the order of the day. We had people like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, etc., etc. They all came with philosophies, with the idea or with the intent of shaping people, molding good characters, making them fit for society. Often more practical for life, but limited in access. The downside to education in the past was that only the rich people could access it. If you're a poor man, rather unfortunately, you wouldn't be able to access information. But there's one thing I really like about education in the past, in the sense that it was more practical, unlike what we see today. Now, what does it mean to be educated now? Education now is wider, more democratic, and technologically advanced, but can feel less personal less moral, and more stressful. I want to take it one by one. When we say education now is wider, it means that unlike previously where only the rich people could access it, now we have a wide range of people that can access education. It is more democratic. It means that you wouldn't have to have a centralized institution that offers education. Tools like YouTube, Google have made information more democratic. So even with the ease of your mobile device, you can access these decentralized modes of education or institutions of education. Technologically advanced, I think I don't really have to explain that. We know it ourselves. This is where emphasis is on. But can feel less personal, less moral, and more stressful. Now you notice that in the past, people were molding characters. But right now, what do we see? It's more like what you are learning for the job market. You are not necessarily learning to develop a character. You are learning for the job market. And that is what I meant by feeling less personal, less moral. You and I can attest to the fact that currently, one of the things that is out of education is character training. Because you come to your class, you wear anything you want to wear, and nobody, forgive my vulgar language, nobody gives a fuck. Because, I mean, we are in a free world. The lecturer is very busy, he's too busy handling a lot of people that he would have to waste his time on you individually. So you notice that the morality is unlike education in the past. And it is more stressful. We are medical lab scientists, but we learn statistics. I'm not saying statistics is not important, but I want to paint a picture that the stress comes from learning plenty things. The stress, it comes from learning plenty things. Now, what would education look like in the future? What do you think education will look like in the future? Given the trajectories, I've given you a timeline from the past to the present. So what do you think education will look like in the future? Because definitely, we've had a lot of tools like AI, right? And AI is shaping the future. Before I tell you how education in the future may look like, how many of us know this man? How many of us know this man? Abraham Lincoln, exactly. Now, Abraham Lincoln made one profound statement that I really like. He said, the best way to predict the future is by creating it. The best way to predict the future is by creating it. Now, I want to predict the future, and that is why I want to create it. And that is why I'm attempting at creating it. But there's a problem. What is the problem? Fortunately or unfortunately, we have something that has set the ball rolling for the future, and you can't change it. That is, what can you say on the board? Yeah. Exactly. Whether you like it or not, AI is going to shape the future. It's going to shape the education of the future. That is why I included fortunately or unfortunately. This is the premise of the future. Now, you are in a Ghanaian institution, and anytime they set exams for you, it is as though the teacher wants you to memorize, not necessarily apply, not necessarily understand. Or am I lying? Yes. In the Ghanaian institutions, what do we see? A lot of people, or a lot of teachers, right, when they set their exams, it's as though they want us to shoo, and provide. So oftentimes, the best students, I'm not saying in all instances, I'm saying oftentimes, in most instances, the people who perform best are those who have a great memory, the ability to recall information. These are the ones that are very perfect at that art. So the chew and pour approach we are forced to adopt under our current education system is something AI already does better. So perhaps the real question we should be asking is, what will it mean to be educated in the future. To be educated in the future may not mean having more information, but being more human. For instance, thinking deeply, feel wisely, and act responsibly. Because you are in school and everything the lecturer is teaching you is like he's feeding you knowledge. But the problem here is that AI has a huge plethora of knowledge. So what then is your use as a human being? Or what then is your use to be educated? That is what this public lecture intends to tackle. Thinking deeply, feeling wisely, and acting responsibly. For us to prepare ourselves for the future, we have to have this at the back of our mind. For us to prepare for the future, this is what we have to have at the back of our minds. There has to be a link between remembering and applying. What do I mean? So the teacher comes to class and he teaches you something, let's say general physics. They teach you about Newton's law. The exam question that is supposed to be set is, using Newton's law as reference, can you think about something? Can you create something? Can you apply it in a specific instance? That is the question the lecturer is supposed to be asking you. Because if the lecturer asks you, what is Newton's first law of motion? Come on, AI knows that already. It's of no use to ask you, because we have computers that do the chew and pour, that have large volumes of memory, far better than you can do. You know, your whole lifetime in your whole lifetime, right? The information that you can actively store in here matches nowhere near to that AI can store. Right. So, for people to be prepared for the future, we must always have it at the back of our minds to establish a link between remembering and applying. It means that when they teach you a concept in class, it is up to you to find a way to apply it in real life. If someone teaches about, give me something random. Let's say they teach you something in hematology, right? They teach you the size of a red blood cell. It is up to you not to only store the information in your head, but see how best you can apply it. Because the thing AI lacks to do, or the thing AI cannot properly do, is how to apply information in certain contexts. That is what makes you human. So kindly go to my previous slide. Another one. What I wrote in there is, to be educated in the future may not mean having more information, but being more human. That is thinking deeply. Trust me, AI cannot do this. AI relies on the information that is being put out there on the internet. So thinking deeply is not a trait of AI. That is where you as a human comes in. Feeling wisely. AI doesn't have emotions. So oftentimes when you put a prompt into the chatbot, because it has been programmed to sound optimistic each and every time, it's as though the AI is fanfooling you. Feeling wisely. Because at certain points in time, right, it is not every particular point in time or in life where I'm going to be happy. I'm going to have a happy emotion, right? It's not every point in time or point in life where I'm going to have that emotion. There are certain times that require that I be sad. There are certain times that require that I be happy. There are certain times that require that I be angry. But AI, rather unfortunately, can't do that. And that is what I meant by feel wisely and act responsibly. When we say act responsibly, what do we mean? You see, AI is just some people behind putting information, and then the AI just absorbs the information and uses it for its thing. So in an instance where you need to consider certain human factors and act responsibly, the AI may not be fully capacitated to do that. And that is what I meant by act responsibly. Now, the Flynn effect. The Flynn effect. What is the Flynn effect? The Flynn effect is the observed phenomenon that average IQ scores have increased over time across many parts of the world, especially the 20th century. So the Flynn effect is the observed phenomenon that average IQ scores have increased over time across many parts of the world, especially during the 20th century. Now, some group of scientists, right, led by a certain man called Mr. Flynn, decided to observe the IQ of people across generations. Mr. Flynn decided to sit his ass down and observe the IQ scores. And what he observed was that there was a certain trajectory. It was just going like this, meaning that IQ scores were gradually increasing as society developed. Interesting, right? Yeah. Good. One of the key features is that the greatest gains were not seen in abstract reasoning. The greatest gains were often seen in abstract reasoning and problem solving, not necessarily in knowledge-based areas. This is where one of my arguments holds solid. You see what it said there? Abstract reasoning, meaning that sometimes you are at the comfort zone or you are at your comfort zone and you are thinking, what if this happened, or what if this was to be the case? You are just having these internal debates going on in your mind. These are the things that enable an individual to increase their IQ score. Problem solving. Rather unfortunately, the Ghanaian educational system doesn't encourage people to solve problems. Because if we truly were to solve problems, if truly the education system was optimized to solve problems, then the solutions or the problems the country faces would have had solutions to them by now. And not necessarily seen in knowledge-based areas. What do I mean by that? Knowledge. When you come to school, what they give you is knowledge. All the teacher feeds you with is knowledge. He doesn't necessarily give you how to apply it, because how we can apply knowledge is at our own discretion. How someone applies knowledge is subject to their experiences, subject to what they see each and every single day. Right? So when the teacher gives you the knowledge, it is up to you to do something with it. And that is why we said the greatest gains were not necessarily in knowledge-based areas, because the knowledge is just there. How you apply it. And that is why the theme for this public lecture is called the wisdom gap. Initially, the subject or the title of this public lecture was Smarter but not Wiser. Smarter in the sense that now we have access to smartphones, smart tools, AI, internet, etc., etc. Right, but not wiser, meaning that the ability to apply is not there. So as much as you see the generation evolving, people getting smarter, they are not necessarily getting wiser. Now, I've told you about the Flynn effect. Something strange occurred after Flynn had done his studies. The reverse Flynn effect refers to a decline in average IQ scores over time. From the 1990s, partly due to the advent of computers in certain countries, essentially the opposite of the original Flynn effect. So now, Mr. Flynn was observing that from generation to generation, the IQ scores were increasing. They were increasing. Now, the advent of the computers came, and then the IQ scores of people started decreasing. That is from the 1990s. This is where you have the calculators coming in. You have the machines that are removing the cognitive efforts of individuals, cognitive offloading, right? Computers coming in to replace mental efforts. And this is what contributed or attributed to the reverse Flynn effect. In certain countries, essentially the opposite of the original Flynn effect. And the countries we are referring to are the countries that saw the inventions. Kindly take us. Yes. So now, I've said a whole lot of things. Perhaps you have not been able to connect whatever it is that I have said so far. But this is where I want to establish the bridge. We've moved from character-based learning, that is education in the past, to information overload, which is now. Because right now there's a lot of information that exists on the internet. Information overload. But in a world where machines can know more, the true challenge is to be more human. I taught you the values of human beings. The values we stand for: thinking deeply, acting responsibly, and feeling wisely. The wisdom gap isn't about what we know, but how we live what we know. The future of education won't reward those with the most data, that is the few and poor people in the education system, the Ghanaian. No, the future of education wouldn't reward them. But instead, it is going to reward those who can think deeply, feel wisely, and act responsibly. We shouldn't just gather knowledge. Let's grow in wisdom. That is how we close the gap. And what do I mean by the gap? The wisdom gap. And create the future. Thank you very much. So class.